Explained by the Billy Meier contacts, mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracies, and more. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Dark matter. See also cosmology. Contact Report 228.
Is it possible to determine the mass of matter in our visible material universe if you completely exclude the other 6 belts?
It would be unscientific and arrogant to try to do this, because the entire expanse of our universe is so vast and involved in constant change that it is impossible to calculate exactly. Moreover, our universe, like any other, of course, consists not only of gross matter, but also of pure energies, one of which is black energy, as we call it, which is responsible for a certain form of anti-gravity in the material universe and is estimated to account for 3/5 of all universal energies. Matter must also be seen in different forms. So on the one hand, the visible and tangible matter, which is very small to be calculated with about 0.55, while on the other hand still the dark matter is 1.55. But, as I said, this information is only based on estimations and calculations, which, due to the constant change of the visible material universe, are not constant but extremely variable. To want to name exact results would therefore be nonsensical and arrogant, and moreover ridiculous, because exact calculations cannot be made due to the constant change of the universe.
Then I guess it would be fair to say that our material universe belt is actually dominated by black energy, right?
That is of correctness.
We know, after all, that the total universe does not expand forever, but only expands until the time of 155.5 trillion years, and then succumbs to contraction. During the expansion process of the entire universe, the visible material universe also becomes larger and larger, if I look at the whole thing correctly. And since this must be the case, there must also be different temperatures in our universe, because I assume that heat and cold must be generated by the constant change movement. Am I correct in my assumption?
That is of correctness. Although the temperature fluctuations are universe-wide and very minimal, they occur mainly in those parts of our material universe where the uninterrupted change through the outer immaterial belts takes place. This is what we call the transitionless open change zone.
This transformation zone does produce a rushing sound, as Ptah taught me on the Great Journey. I was also allowed to hear it through the technical devices in the giant spacecraft. It was simply gigantic. Ptah explained to me that the Earthlings call this phenomenon cosmic background radiation, and assume that the Big Bang took place there in that zone, and that the universe also ended there.
Which does not correspond to correctness, as you know.
Of course, because that's where the actual total universe begins with its other 6 immeasurable belts. Ptah also said that the differences in temperature are actually very small, and therefore only subject to tiny fluctuations caused by differences in density in all regions of our material universe.
Contact Report 360.
It must have been 1946, if I remember correctly, when Svath explained to me that there are 2 different types of dark matter in the universe and in the material belt of the universe, respectively. He spoke of a heavy and a light dark matter. As I still remember well, he said at that time that only through these 2 forms of dark matter could the material universe and all the galaxies, suns, planets, comets, meteors, and gas nebulae, etc. be created. This is understandable to me, but Svath did not say how these 2 forms of dark matter form galaxies, etc. In this respect, am I right in assuming that the 2 forms of dark matter cause and go through very specific physical processes, and that they cause a change of matter, and, through rotation, a compression, and that gravity is then also created, by which an actual compression is stimulated, which goes beyond a normal compression? And is it correct that the infinitely existing electrons and neutrinos also play a role in this process, since they also have a certain mass and, under certain circumstances, come together to form rivers or streams in the space of the universe, and also condense?
That can be confirmed, but to speak about it officially in an explanatory way from my side at this point in time would be against our directives.
I see. Our scientists are not yet ready.
That's the meaning of my words.
Contact Report 435.
If I am right, then that means that our material belt, that is to say our visible material part of the universe, will persist for 32,000 more years before a transformation occurs again. And how must one imagine this transformation?
The entirety of the coarse matter material of every kind renews itself. Consequently, therefore, new galaxies, stars, and planets, and so forth come into existence. With this transformation, which takes place within about 2,000 years, certain residues remain, which are deposited both in the transition zones and in the material belt, as dark energy and as particle-like dark matter, which can, with special technologies, be captured and measured. This dark matter is, therefore, very much older than the actual coarse matter material of the visible material belt. That is to say, than the visible part of the universe, which is mistakenly referred to as the universe by the Earth humans, although this material belt constitutes only one part out of the 7 parts which make up the actual universe.
Contact Report 467.
The dark matter in the universe, we have talked about it a few times, but it was only in a private way, so nothing was ever written about it in the contact reports. Yes, you also kept me quiet about this topic. The last time was about 5 years ago. Is it still not allowed to say anything about it? I mean, what is the task of dark matter and what do you call it?
It is not necessary to remain silent about it, so you can openly reveal your knowledge.
Which you could also do. But if you think that I should say something about it, then please, if I remember correctly, you call dark matter expansion substance, which also has the property that it makes every solar system, every galaxy, and the entire universe expand. So it is a kind of expansion matter.
That is true.
Contact Report 471.
Can black holes also form in dwarf galaxies, or is this only true for large galaxies?
They can also occur in small galaxies and dwarf galaxies, as well as in free space, where black holes have been formed since the formation of the matter belt.
Then black holes are not necessarily dependent on galaxies to form?
No, because black holes can also form in free space due to very specific circumstances.
And what are these circumstances?
I am not allowed to talk openly about that, because I have to leave the research of these things to earthly scientists. For them, it must be enough to know that black holes also originate in free world dream.
And so this is only possible in the matter belt, which our scientists mistakenly see as the universe, because they don't know that the matter belt is only one of 7 belts, while the other 6 contain no coarse matter.
Your assumption is true that black holes can only form in the matter belt, because only in the matter belt are the necessary conditions for their formation. In the other matterless universe belts, the formation of black holes is not possible.
Aha! Then the case is clear. Therefore, certain physical factors are necessary for this, such as vibrations or radiations, dark matter and fine matter, which compress and thus become so dense that they become an enormously heavy mass and develop a tremendous gravity and thus an attraction of gigantic strength.
I'm not allowed to give any information about that. It is also not given to me that I could consciously violate our directives.
Contact Report 515.
To be said straight away is that the terrestrial scientists err to a large degree in regard to the sun's lifespan. because it is a dying star, and its real remaining lifetime accordingly amounts to only 1,500,000 to 2,500,000 years. To say, further to that, is that the star has drifted for years in a weak dynamic phase, and only becomes more active now and again, for example, in March 2010. The dynamic of the Sun is based on cycles of approximately 11 years, which, in turn, are connected with the magnetic fields, which, however, also impede the emergence of the energy which surges from the interior of the Sun. But an even greater number of other factors exists through which all processes are determined. Dark matter, which for the terrestrial scientists is still very mysterious, therefore thereby plays a certain role, and indeed in particular in regard to the transport of the Sun's hot energy, because without the influence of the dark matter this would not be possible.
Contact Report 530.
On the 3rd of November, we talked about the dark energy in the universe, through which everything accelerates outwards. But this dark energy, respectively the centrifugal force of the rotating matter belt, has nothing to do with the so-called dark matter, which is being puzzled about by earthly scientists. This should be said before more rascals come along and claim that dark energy and dark matter are one and the same thing.
It is good that you bring it up, because they are actually two different things, because the dark energy is one thing, while the dark matter is something completely different, but I am not allowed to make any explanations.
Exactly. That is what you explained on my great journey, which is why I have also mentioned it now, so that the matter is clear. Dark matter is really a form of matter, an extremely fine form of matter, but not a pure form of energy, which is where centrifugal force comes from. Energy itself is a mass at rest, so to speak, but it has the ability to unfold power from within itself and have an effect. At least, that is how I remember your explanations. However, when it comes to energy and power, the human beings of the Earth always talk about only one thing in relation to energy and power, even though they are fundamentally two different values, because energy is not power, but power is created from energy.
Your words will not please many Earth humans, but they correspond to what should really be understood by energy and power.
Contact Report 535.
Then the question whether you can tell me the mass ratio with regard to all the coarse matter and dark matter in the universe, or whether you are also not allowed to do so.
There is no secrecy for this. The dark matter in the entire universe is about 7 times more in terms of mass than the total mass of all other forms of matter.
Contact Report 544.
When I was in the 4th grade of primary school, and my teacher was Hans Frey, it was in 1948, your father, Svath, explained to me that altogether there are 7 major powers of nature in the universe. On the one hand, the gravity, then the electromagnetism as well as the strong and weak nuclear power, and further the...
Stop, you are not permitted to openly name the 3 others, as indeed my father already had forbidden it to you. These 3 other powers of nature are not yet known of by the terrestrial physicists, and they are still not allowed to discover them because premature cognitions would have severe consequences.
All right, excuse me, it remains withheld. It is certainly not in my interest to betray confided secrets, as I really only wanted to talk about the fact that there are not only the 4 natural powers known to the terrestrial physicists, rather also the remaining 3 which are still unknown to them, which exist as certain tiny and ultra-tiny particles, as related to the gravity, the electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear power. Also, the dark energy and the dark matter are included in the realm of particles, whereby certain of these particles, which are indeed also energies with powers, are supposed to be discovered in the foreseeable future, as you have said recently. Although it will still take a while, the success is to be understood, indeed according to your explanation, as a prediction. Additionally, I assume that I may say that these, let us say, the normal or simple elementary particles, in turn contain, in sevenfold wise, still tiny particles, which, as I learned from Svath, can be designated as ultra-tiny, ultra-elementary particles, so to speak. Even when I with this statement draw attention to the fact that a fundamental sevenfold chain of natural powers exists, and that other particles exist in the already known and unknown elementary particles, and that only then, below that series of seven, that begins, wherefrom originally everything evolved from pure spirit energy, I thereby betray no secret, because all of that corresponds to the spiritual teaching, in which I indeed also mention these things openly. And since the terrestrial physicists, especially the particle physicists, lack the inner and fundamental knowledge about the actual spirit energetical structure of these things, they anyway are not able to comprehend anything of which I speak. There would probably have to be exact statements and explanations in order for the physicists to get any benefit from it. Among the physicists, the physical cognitions in relation to the true and fundamental structure and the exact interrelationships of the material are indeed still in the material realm of the material, because till this day they have not yet become so smart that they would have arrived at the thought that the origin of all material, everything which exists and the entire universe as a whole, cannot be explained simply from the perspective of the purely material realm. So, the elementary particles, as such, despite their energetical tininess and inconspicuousness, are also purely material and not immaterial, because the immaterial is of pure spirit energetical nature, and that energy alone is the absolutely one and only origin of all things and all material of any kind. And thereby, belonging to the material is everything which is solid material, liquid and gaseous, which can also be perceived by the human being and measured in the most various ways and detected, as your father explained to me according to your physics. However, that which is fine fluidal and high fine fluidal consists of pure spirit energy, and this is not graspable for the human being. And alone this spirit energy is the origin of all existence of those things which can be registered, detected and measured in any manner by the human being, while up to the present time it is not yet possible, nor will it be possible for a long time into the future, for human beings to provide evidence for and measure the creational natural spirit energy. But since those terrestrial physicists who deal with the origin of life, and therefore also with the solid, liquid and gaseous material, and who attempt to explore everything in this regard, lack even the most minimal cognition regarding the spirit energy from which everything in its absolute origin has arisen and come about, they are still very far from being able to research for and gain cognitions about how the process of coming into material, being results from the purely spiritual energy. Like children who poke around in their food annoyedly and do not find in it what tastes good to them, so the terrestrial physicists poke around in an area where they cannot find the real origin of all things. Of course it is necessary, with the research related to this, to recognize the purely material aspects of the material, and then to in the right way utilize these cognitions so as to do no harm with them. But if the real origin of all things is to be recognized, then after all the cognition must mature that it lies in the spirit energy. However, this energy has nothing to do with that which is erroneously designated as spirit by the human beings of Earth, which as such is supposed to embody what is the human consciousness. The spirit, that is to say, the spirit energy, is not the consciousness because the spirit, or indeed does not think, and it creates no spiritual property because this is reserved for the material consciousness alone. Thus, in human beings or other life forms, also no illness of the spirit can appear, rather only a consciousness clouding and consciousness illness, and so forth, because the spirit, that is to say, the spirit form, the spirit energy, is absolutely off limits and not capable of being influenced by anything whatsoever such as diseases etc. from the material realm.
Contact Report 586.
Once again I would like to talk about black matter, because the earthly astrophysicists are still bickering about what it might be, but they just don't get to the point. We have talked about this matter several times, but you have always said that you are not allowed to give any information about it. Here is my question. On the one hand, you say that dark matter is an expanding substance or matter, but on the other hand, you also once said that only through dark matter is gravity possible and can function. Isn't that a contradiction? Somehow I just do not understand the whole thing. It confuses me.
As far as I am allowed to make a statement, I will explain the following. Dark matter is an interactive mass, which means that it is massive particles which, measured in the atomic range, have an enormous weight. These massive particles have an interaction that is related to both gravity and expansion force, which is why I explained that dark matter is expansion matter, although I did not mention that it is also gravity matter. So without the dark matter, there would be neither centrifugal force nor gravity. So without gravity, no expansion substance can exist, and without expansion matter, no gravity. Both factors, centrifugal force and gravity, are everywhere, but they are only perceptible and therefore also measurable, but not visible, because they radiate neither light nor darkness visible to the eye. I am not allowed to explain more about this.
So far, I understand what you are saying, but I would be interested to know how it works and other connections, as well as whether dark matter also exists in the black holes, which seems logical to me, although I also know, because you told me, that there are small and large black holes in the whole space of the universe, apart from the central black holes at the center of the galaxies.
I am not allowed to explain further about dark matter, but with regard to black holes, I can say once again that they exist in almost incalculable numbers throughout the universe and also in free space. So there are large ones that comprise or contain millions of times the masses of the sun, while others are small and almost puny, as you once said, because they do not cover even 1 cubic meter. And of course, black holes also contain dark matter.
Contact Report 592.
Thanks. Then once again I have a question about dark matter, which you call expansion matter. I was asked a question about what is meant by this. So I answered what you explained to me, that expansion substance is the universal gravitational force, which runs through the whole universe like a net and forms knots in groups, in constant change. And if I myself have understood correctly what you have explained to me, then the entire network corresponds to an invisible gravitational energy, which attracts or forms and collects every form of fine matter, and at the same time expands or expands, from which material formations and even galaxies are formed, whereby, in this respect, the very energetic nodes play a particularly important role. So this invisible universal gravity net, especially its nodes, forms all kinds of fine matter, whereby this fine matter is not yet known to earthly scientists. The nodes are constantly widening and expanding, which ultimately results in visible matter that develops into galaxies. And because the dark matter expands in this way, you call it expansion substance, whereby the invisible matter develops and expands into nodes, or visible matter, from which planets, suns, and whole galaxies develop over billions of years. Dark matter is not to be confused with the factor called dark energy, which corresponds to the universal centrifugal force.
This is correct, but this only corresponds to what I have explained to you, which you may also pass on. However, our directives do not allow me to explain more about this. Because the knowledge of dark matter can hold many dangers for the earthly sciences, precisely when it is made useful and used for far-reaching destructive weaponry.
This is understandable, for the barbaric earthlings will be in a state of barbaric destructive fury for a long time to come, and will therefore immediately convert all knowledge and materials they acquire into mortal and destructive weapons. Therefore, I have also only explained what I have understood, knowing that the explanations are not the yellow of the egg, but only a superficial explanation. In the worst case, all the madmen of this world, the degenerate rulers and their vassals, would even blow up the earth if the means to do so fell into their blood-soaked hands. For all these mighty men are blind in their lust for power and domination, and they are not able to use their intellect, just as they cannot use reason.
Contact Report 707.
The lowest universe, that is to say the lowest creation form, is for example the Dern universe of the Milky Way with the Sol system as well as the Earth, where earthly mankind exists, whereby the Dern universe form in the creation of universal consciousness is not the only dimension in it, because the creation in itself comprises 7 dimensions, that is to say space-time structure with 7 belts chi levels, of which one is the matter belt and also has dark matter.